Dan Quisenberry died way too young, at the age of just 45. But if you watched baseball in the 1980s, you'll never forget him. Quiz was the closer for the Kansas City Royals. I think you have to be a little bit different to be a closer, and maybe a lot different to be a closer who throws a fastball that tops out at 85 on a good day with a tailwind. But Dan Quisenberry was smart, really intelligent. He published some of his poetry in a book titled On Days Like This, still available on Amazon. Watching Dan throw may remind you of someone else. Quiz was the American League version of the Pirates' Kent Tekulve. I can't talk about Quisenberry without talking about Tekulve. They are intertwined. Both relief pitchers threw submarine, but did you know that Quiz learned his submarine delivery directly from the master himself? Quiz was more of a sidearm pitcher, and it was under Tekulve's tutoring that he would develop his submarine delivery. More on that in a bit. Much like Teak, Quiz had an uphill battle to get to Major League Baseball. After high school, he played at the only school he could, Orange Coast Community College. He would end up the team MVP. He then enrolled at Laverne College, and in 2 years would be an NAIA All-American. In the 1975 draft, 679 players were selected. Dan Quisenberry was not one of them. Undrafted, just like Tekulve. And just as Teak needed help to get a tryout with the Pirates, Dan's college coach, Ben Hines, would be critical to Dan getting an opportunity with the Royals. Thanks to his coach's connections, the Royals agreed to give Dan a chance if he was willing to play at Class A Waterloo Royals for $500 a month. Keep in mind that minor league players only get paid for 5 months out of the year. This was not a lot of money. He made his debut on June 22, 1975, and he pitched a complete game 5-3 win against Wausau. It was his first and last start for the Royals organization. Manager John Sullivan moved him to the bullpen, saying he needed someone who could throw strikes in the pen, and he thought it would be Dan's best hope of making Major League Baseball. Dan would spend the next couple of years between Waterloo and AA Jacksonville Suns, and finally, 5 years in, he would get moved to AAA Omaha Royals in 1979. He would get the call-up and make his debut that same year, July 8, 1979. He wouldn't give up a run in his first 6 appearances. He finished 1979 with 5 saves and 32 appearances. But at this point in his career, Dan was still more of a 3/4 arm slot kind of guy. And in the offseason, manager Whitey Herzog would be replaced by Jim Fry. And this would prove to be critical because in spring training, Jim Fry was watching Dan pitch, and after a bad outing, he pulled him to the side and asked him something that would probably offend most pitchers. He asked him, "Are you throwing as hard as you can?" It was Jim Fry who suggested that Quiz drop his delivery even lower to a true submarine similar to what Kent Tekulve was doing, as he and the Pirates had just won the World Series the year before. Fry contacted Teak and put the two men together. It would be a golden era for submarine pitchers having these two great relievers in the game at the same time. If we compare Quiz and Teak, we can see nearly the same career WAR, and both won a World Series. Teak played longer, with roughly 40% more innings pitched, but look at the K and walk rate. Tekulve struck out batters at about a 50% higher rate than Quiz, but also walked batters at more than twice the rate. And as I said earlier, Quiz was not a strikeout guy. He rarely even threw his mediocre fastball because it wasn't very effective. He built his career on his sinker, and he was a ground ball machine. Quite different from today's closers. When I think of the prototype closer in 2024, it's the guy who can strike out the side with a mix of fastballs and sliders. I would venture to say that a guy like Dan Quisenberry probably wouldn't even get a chance at a major league tryout in today's baseball, and that's a real shame. Everyone is so enamored with velocity that guys like Quiz and Teak have almost just disappeared from the game. The irony of it all is that because of this paradigm shift to velo, a guy like Quiz would probably be so different and such a unicorn that I think he'd just confuse the bejesus out of hitters. In any event, Quiz proved to be a fast learner under Tekulve's mentorship. He threw primarily one pitch, a sinker, but would mix in a curve and on occasion, a knuckleball. With his motion now dropped to true submarine, he was getting 75% of his outs as ground balls. He and Tekulve were effectively changing the idea of what a closer could be. He rarely struck out batters, 37 Ks in 128 innings, but he didn't walk them either. Just 27 walks, and 15 of those were intentional walks. What he did do was save games. He led the American League with 33 in 1980, won the Rolaids Fireman of the Year award, and would end up leading the league in 5 of 6 seasons between 1980 and 1985. He induced so few strikeouts and so many ground balls that George Brett teased him with congratulations on the 30-30-30 club. 30 saves, 30 strikeouts, 30 great plays made behind him. He got off to a slow start in 1981, but finished the strike-shortened season with a 1.73 ERA. And in 1982, Quisenberry won the Fireman of the Year award for the second time with 35 saves, 9 wins, and 72 appearances, walking only 12 batters in 136 innings. 1983, 84, and 85 were the best years of his career. You can see his stats here from Baseball Reference. He led the league in saves and finished in second twice and third twice in the Cy Young voting. He also pitched in every game of the 1980 World Series. In the back half of Dan's career, he was still posting ERA plus seasons of over 100, but those years were mixed in with seasons where he struggled with giving up home runs, a bad recipe for longevity as a closer. By 1990, Dan's career was suddenly over at the age of 37. He was having shoulder pain in early 1990 with the Giants and just decided that it was time for him to retire. And I don't know this for a fact, but I would guess Dan would never regret that decision because in just a few short years, he would be gone. Tragically, Dan Quisenberry would develop a brain tumor that took his life at age 45. But there may be more to this story. There's an inordinate number of players from the 1980s Royals team that have died from brain cancer. Turns out there are also a statistically outrageous number of athletes that played on turf in the 1980s that died from brain cancers. Listen to this. According to the National Cancer Institute, the rate of new cases of brain and other nervous system cancer is 6.2 per 100,000 men and women per year. The death rate is 4.4 for 100,000 men and women per year. So that's a probability of 0.00004, or 1 in every 22,727 people. Let me say that again. 1 in every 22,727 people develop brain tumors that are lethal. Yet somehow, at least 3 of the 1980 Kansas City Royals died from brain cancer. Dan Quisenberry at age 45, Dick Hauser at age 51, and Ken Brett at age 55. Seems odd, doesn't it? It's statistically almost impossible. 3 men among a selected pool of about 30, say 24-man roster plus coaches. My friend Sean and I have started researching this a little bit more. Subscribe if you don't want to miss the eventual video where we go into more detail on this. Sorry to end on such a somber note, but take heart in knowing that Dan Quisenberry, by all accounts, lived a great life, was loved by many, and loved many. And what else can we hope for? I want to leave you with one of Dan's poems, Ode to My Children. Can I teach you to say goodbye, to laugh and to cry, to live with the light and the dark? Can I teach you to feel and forgive, to jump and to spin, to fall and get up again? Can I teach you to love and to hold, to read and to sing, to fly on your own and return again? Can I teach you to risk and to dare, to dream and to run, and come see me again? Can I teach you to argue and to bless, to pray and to rest, to look folks in the eye, to speak and not lie? I love you forever. I pray night and day. In my heart I'm glad you'll make your own way. Damn. Dan Quisenberry. Thank you. Take care.
over the plate. Now work on your control.
Yeah, but what if they hit it?
Well, Andy, when I'm pitching, I want them to hit it, but I don't want them to hit it solidly. What I want is for them to hit it at someone. That's my number one pitch, the atom. Make them hit it at them. Then trust in a little help from your friends.
Make them hit them at them.
In a word, control.
How do you get control?
Let's show him, Quiz. Right outside, down and away on the black.
I try to tuck at the waist and get my hands out away from my body. And I attempt to sit down on my back leg a little bit. And the next big step is to bring my left leg out as far as I can to the left side to let my body go through the pitch. During the whole sequence, I'm bending over and I try to drop my right arm down and pretend I'm scraping my knuckles off the ground.
Dan, all of them right on the black.
Wow, we can't get much sharper than that.